Clark, Fish, Johnson, Jorgensen, Cole, Steen, Mayor Buck.
There, okay. I saw green, now I see red. Yep, we're good. Thank you. There's quite a few slides. I'm gonna go through them very quickly. If you do have some questions as we go through, please stop me. But the idea here is to give you guys an update on where we're at with the transportation plan and get your input. So we've got some slides that we used with our stakeholders. So basically what we want to talk about is any questions you've got, talk a little bit about what we heard when we talked to the public March 7th and the stakeholders March 7th, and then talk about next steps on the plan. So if we go to the next slide, yeah, real quick, we're about halfway through the calendar on this project, planning to wrap it up this September. If we go to the next slide, what we've been doing basically is looking at all the, there's a lot going on obviously in a fast growing community. So looking at all the other studies that are going on that, we're doing that 30,000 foot view of the whole entire study area. A lot of these studies get to go a little bit more in depth. So we're taking all that information, incorporating it into the overall master transportation plan. And if we go to the next slide, we've also been doing a lot of technical analysis of our own and kind of combining that with what we hear from the public and stakeholders and anything you guys would have to add to that. But looking at congestion, safety, how freight moves, bicycle and pedestrian connections, and transit. So if we go to the next one, yeah, we've got 5 years worth of crash data that we looked at the entire study area. On the next slide, you'll see we've got some kind of hot spots of where we see the most crashes. Those areas will warrant a little bit more in-depth review. So we'll kind of, go in and look at that data there. On the next slide, also, we looked at bicycle and pedestrian systems, looking at the sidewalks, the trails, where we've got crossings, where we might need more. There is the ongoing bicycle and pedestrian plan that we will be incorporating into this as well. If we go to the next slide, look for areas of congestion. And so we used, in the next slide, you'll see a few little hot spots for kind of peak hour congestion, some corridors like Split Rock, a little bit on Holly. And, you know, we've got corridor studies on both of those, so clearly it's something the community's recognized before. Working with the Sioux Falls MPO, we also, with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, also looked at future traffic forecasts on the next slide and started to look out 20 years to look at where we anticipate congestion starting to pop up. And some more of those corridors started to emerge. And so those are the areas with this planning process that we'll start looking at, identifying what sort of projects we might need in the future, start preparing, you know, trying to get out ahead of that as part of this planning process. If we go to the next slide. So yeah, kind of key takeaways. We do have some areas of peak congestion. I'm sure, you know, those of you that drive it every day know. Safety is a big concern, clearly. And so we're going to focus on those areas with the most crashes and you know, work to identify some potential solutions. And then freight and bicycle and pedestrian connections are important as well. So March 7th, we had a public open house at the golf course from 4 to 7. Had people from the public come visit. We had some informational boards. We had some opportunities for them to kind of weigh in on what they thought the key needs were in the study area. We had some mapping. They could mark things that they thought were, you know, concerns or issues or things they liked, what, you know, how things are going and what we should improve. We also had a stakeholder meeting actually in this room between 1 and 2 the same day. And so what we were really looking for is kind of the direction for the plan. What were the goals and objectives? How should we really frame the plan? And also for those, you know, locations where there were safety concerns or traffic operational concerns, whether it's schools or, you know, or they were worried about vehicular safety or pedestrian safety, things like that. So we started to put together some summaries of that. That's going to be on the website here soon. And then the other, I think in the next slide kind of shows the big takeaways from that. Some of the corridors that folks really were talking about were Holly and Sioux and Split Rock, Aspen. I know Redwood, the new school out to the east came up quite a bit with Redwood. Traffic and pedestrian access around schools was a lot of the discussion topics and things that people were talking about at the meeting. And then we had folks kind of weigh in on what they thought the most important things that this study could do. And so you can see the 4 there was basically safety, you know, really focus on safety. A lot of folks really were wanting to focus on bicycle and pedestrian, making sure we had, you know, connected bicycle and pedestrian networks and safe crossings of streets. Efficiency and reliability and access, that's really, you know, connecting folks with jobs and shopping and places they want to go. And just making sure that, you know, that we don't let congestion get out of control. So that's really what we heard during those meetings. And so we're kind of going into the next steps, if you want to go to the next slide. Really working on incorporating that feedback. And then we would say alternatives, that's kind of like, okay, what are the potential projects that we're going to look at for the inclusion in the plan? Start going through those, seeing how they line up with the goals and objectives, see how they line up with funding, kind of start identifying, you know, this is a 20-year plan horizon, so start identifying what those short-term needs are, what are those longer-term needs, what do we need to start preparing for. And then one of the other big things is standards development with this. It's just making sure that we've got the tools to kind of efficiently and safely lay out, you know, new streets and new sidewalks and trails and pedestrian crossings as the, you know, system continues to develop into the future. And I guess that kind of wraps up what I was going to, you know, present to you. I know it's real quick, but I didn't. It's a lot of information, but I would, if you had any follow-up questions or questions for me now, please ask. I know Tammy is very involved in this, and then we've got a website too as well that links to the city's website. So I would welcome any questions if you've got them, or, you know, you can follow back up with the study as we continue to progress through this summer and fall.
I have one quick one. You
Yeah.
mentioned funding. Are there
Yep.
any alternative funding sources that you're aware of that we could potentially utilize?
Yep. So actually, so what we need to still do is kind of establish that baseline of where we are with, you know, with local funding, city funding, state funding, and federal funding. Yeah, one of the big things that came out with the bipartisan infrastructure legislation a year and a half ago was a lot of new grant opportunities. And so there's a lot of potential grant opportunities out there. I know we're starting to look at other opportunities with different federal funding. And then, you know, is there other local, you know, private, public type funding collaborations that might be available. So we're still getting there, but yeah, there's opportunities out there.
I'm sorry, I missed your name at the
Oh,
beginning.
sorry, Jason Carby with HDR. Yep. C-A-R-B as in boy, and then 2 E's as in Edward. Yep.
So in regards to the bicycle and pedestrian connections, so what are you thinking there, like when we build a road to make sure we have a sidewalk along it, or what would
Right.
fall under that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways you could do that. It could be, there might be gaps in the existing network where we don't have sidewalks, and maybe it's, connecting a big residential development with schools or shopping. It would make sense to, have a connection there. And if there's no street project, those might be high enough priority where you'd want to consider, if you have the right of way, if you can do it, you might consider adding that. But yeah, typically what we're looking for is when you do a new street project, does it fit with the rest of the network to have a trail, like a 10-foot wide sidewalk, or just at a minimum sidewalk standards for those? Yeah. So it is a combination of standalone projects for bicycle and pedestrian, where crossings might make sense also, but also when we do have a street project where we need to go in and basically tear up the street, whether it's a widening or a reconstruction, look for those opportunities to improve that connection.
And one more thing on
Yeah.
the bicycle, did you get a lot of feedback of trying to, wanting to be able to connect the bluffs to the core, the golf course basically to the core? Did you get a lot of feedback on that?
Yeah, a lot of it focused in and around schools from the folks that we heard. But I think as we look at a broader network, and I think when we start incorporating what we heard in the bicycle and pedestrian plan, I think we're going to come up with that more complete network where we're connecting some of the more outer areas into the core of the city. So yeah, I think those are the types of concepts that fit pretty well with what we heard.
I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the work you've done. I think from a public safety standpoint, I think one of the things that I hear a lot is a new entrance and exit out of the Aspen Park. And so, to me, that's a pretty high priority from a safety standpoint. And then safe route to school, I hear that also, so.
Yeah, we did hear a lot of those types of comments too. I do appreciate the feedback.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for Jason?
Thank you all.
Looks like we're
Appreciate it.
Getting overhauled here.
We can only have 3 on at a time.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. All right. All right, we'll move on. Old business, we have the second reading of ordinance 679, the new neighborhood business district. Patrick, bring us up to speed.
So we held the first reading public hearing at our last meeting. This is the neighborhood business district that you directed planning and zoning to come up with, and hopefully we have addressed most of your thoughts. So I am here if you have any questions.
Have you had any community feedback since the first reading?
I have not.
No, okay.
Any other questions?
I think this one has been worked over pretty well. I would make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve the second
Or is that
reading.
the right terminology? Or approve the second reading, or what's the, okay, whatever.
Any further discussion?
You know what I mean?
Hearing and seeing no other further discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have the second reading of ordinance 680, amending chapter 15-22-2.
So this is the amendment that changes around some definitions for parking. Currently, our parking regulations are, the rules that apply to the space applies to the access to the space. Some of them have no parking in the setbacks, so you couldn't have an access to them in the setbacks, and that gets tricky when you want an access between parking lots. So this defines separately parking lot mutual access easement, a public street mutual access easement, and a drive lane in a parking lot to try to make it more functional to allow flow through parking lots.
And this applies to new construction or people that have that agreement between neighbors, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And in order to utilize the mutual access easement, a maintenance agreement of that connecting space would need to be reached between the properties.
Motion and second to approve second reading of ordinance 680. Any further discussion?
I just had a question. So Patrick, on those agreements, what, does the agreement spell out what happens if somebody sells? I presume that's all in that language between the owners of the property? That, we don't get into that, but,
We're not that far in depth on it. It terminates if one decides to terminate the agreement. It would revert back to the regular rule of you can't utilize the setback, but we don't have anything specifically for the agreement. It would just need to be a maintenance agreement that they upkeep it, however they come to that agreement.
Any further discussion?
Just to add to that a little bit, Barb, on that agreement, I usually review those, and then those do get filed at the county as well when they file the plat. And we just make sure that there's something in there for snow removal and repairs and that sort of thing. So it runs with the land. Yep.
Any other discussion? We have a motion to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks for all your work. I know you put in a lot of time on this.
yes, I was gonna say that Patrick has put in a ton of time, so
I
appreciate your.
already said it.
Yeah, well, I'm saying it again.
Okay. Terrific. Standing committee reports. We'll start with the golf course. Anything in particular other than what we have on the agenda to report? We have the retaining wall project pay application number 5.
Construction
for-
construction out there is pretty slow at the moment. Most of this change order is just materials, backfill materials that you can see in the parking lot there.
I'll look for a motion. Motion and second to approve the pay application number 5 on the golf course retaining wall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have temporary employees to hire. Do we need a motion on this, Christina? I think we do. Okay, you saw the list on page 66.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the hiring of temporary employees. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Parks and Rec. The park report was on page 67. Tennis court lights at the middle school. The staff met with the school last week, and they are in the process of drawing up an agreement. And we'll see that, I assume, at an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. And public safety, I see that since the first of the year, the fire department has made 83 calls. Is the chief here tonight? Don't see him. I want to go on record of thanking those volunteers. I sincerely appreciate the job that they do, and I think it's important that they know that their efforts do not go unnoticed or unappreciated. Administration communication report on page 69. I would say also we have the request for the sales tax rebate from Lloyd Companies. We can do a discussion on this, but we're not going to make any motion on this until at least our next meeting.
Correct. Brian would like to defer to the next meeting when he's here, too.
Anybody have comments to make? Thoughts?
If Lloyd is present, he can certainly come up.
Hi, I'm Luke Wickreff with Lloyd Companies. Just going to give you guys some background on this project. The site is located in the Rovang Industrial Park, just north of Marmon Energy. Total site is 20.6 acres. The main manufacturing building is going to be 90,000 square feet. It'll have an additional 5,000 square feet of office space on the west side. Total project cost is $19.2 million. Right now, we're estimating $12.5 million in added assessed property value. It's going to come down to about $44,000 in added real estate tax going directly to the city of Brandon. A little background on the business itself. Lloyd Companies acquired Engineered Truss Systems in the fall of '22. They're currently located in Sioux Falls. ETS manufactures roof and floor trusses and is currently at capacity at their current facility. The bigger building that we will be putting up in the Rovang Industrial Park will allow them to produce more trusses and also add a manufacturing line to produce wall panels. At the start, the business will employ around 30 people. And then the request that we're looking for is similar to the sales tax abatement Henkel requested in January of '22, just abating that local sales tax on manufacturing equipment. We're estimating our equipment cost at $3.9 million, or a abatement amount of $78,000. We're requesting that the abatement start May 1st of 2023 and last for a 24-month period. I can definitely answer any questions you guys might have.
I don't think I have any questions. The tax revenue situation, Christina, is that something that, does that sound right to you?
Property tax. So currently they're in a TIF district, so the city would not gain any property tax value until that TIF is deobligated. And then my understanding is they also have a tax abatement on that property, so therefore we would not receive anything. I think it's 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, but I think that applies after the TIF. So
Okay,
it'd
maybe
be a
we can
while.
chase that to be sure before our next meeting.
Yep.
How long
Okay.
does a TIF last?
It depends on how much was either borrowed or put on the project. So I think this TIF was for up to $2 million, so however long it would take to pay back $2 million. But you can only go a max of 20 years.
I guess my comment would be, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm against this abatement, but I think we're at the point where Brandon is an attractive enough community that we maybe don't need to be giving away our sales tax dollars to get businesses here. We're very grateful that you're coming, so don't get me wrong on that. But that was the way economic development used to be. We would, have the property and try to entice businesses to come to town, and I'm not sure we need to do that anymore. And so I guess I would like to, I don't know if we need a policy or maybe it's just a case-by-case basis, but I would really like us to chase this around at some point to see if this is something that we need to continue to do. Because for us, on our $10 million budget, $78,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that between now and our next meeting, we'll see what the definite particulars are as far as the TIF is concerned and when we would start receiving property taxes.
Yep, and I'll know more on that in the next meeting.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question for Luke? The 30 jobs, are these in addition to what they're already employing, or is this, some of these going to be already current employees that will just be moving to the new facility?
So they've been hiring. I'm not sure exactly where they're at. They're right around that 30 mark. The facility wouldn't open until November of '23, so they'll probably add a few more to get to that 30. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Luke. I appreciate you coming in. Appreciate you
guys.
being here. I don't think so. The annual report, you've had an opportunity to look at that. Any questions, thoughts?
I can just go over a few highlights.
Okay,
A few of the pages I just kind of focus on are page 78 of your packet, but otherwise it's page 5 of your annual report. It's statement of revenues and expenditures for governmental funds. The governmental funds revenue brought in a little under $11.5 million. Most of that being sales tax, a little over $5 million, and then the rest property tax at a little over $3.3 million. And then we have our expenditure side. We did pay down debt, about $1.8 million in debt, and then a little over $6 million we spent on capital projects. That is on the next page, on page 6 or page 79 of the packet. So we've been spending a lot on capital projects, and it kind of shows on this report a little bit. And then the fund balance did go down in the general fund a little bit, about $240,000. Some of that we paid off the core project, a little about $1 million went to the core project, and then $1.5 million went to the golf course on their wall project. So only decreasing about $240,000 in general fund is really good, actually. Our sales tax was really high. Are you page 6 towards the bottom of the page? Yep. The next one I kind of look at is page 11 or page 84 of the packet. This is your proprietary funds, so your water, sewer, golf course, streetlight. This is your statement of cash flows. I also kind of look towards the bottom of the increase or decrease in cash. The water fund did go down a little bit. Our operating O&M was good, and we raised some money on that, but we did pay kind of like for engineering for our water treatment plant out of cash, which we had anticipated and wanted to draw that down a little bit. The sewer fund, that was towards spending on some projects. We had some COVID relief money come in, so that is in our cash, and then we spent that money on a project this year. And we have a little bit left over to spend next year as well. And then page 16 or page 89 of the packet is our governmental funds long-term debt. This is government only. We did add new debt of $3 million, and then we paid off a little over $1.2 million in governmental debt. We did add $18 million, a little over $18 million in the water fund for the treatment plant. So we added a lot last year, just not necessarily governmental funds. And then the last 2 pages are what we publish in the paper. That is our annual report that goes to the paper and gets published in there. It's just an overview of all the funds, revenues and expenditures, and just kind of condenses it down a little bit. But if anybody should have any questions on it, just give me a call. And it does need to be a motion for approval.
I did want to point out a couple things. So on page 5, I don't know what that is in the packet, but, so the property taxes are 3.3 and the sales tax is 5. And correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, but it used to be that they were pretty comparable. It was about half and half.
They were about half and half.
And so that's a real blessing for us that sales tax is going up like that from 3.3 and then the sales tax is 5, because that's where we can make some money, so to speak. That's because property tax is capped. We can only grow our property tax so much. So where we really get our oomph for our, streets and parks and all police and everything is from the sales tax. So that tells me that the chamber's efforts in trying to get the sales tax generated here, our efforts, we're making progress. So if you can just, encourage everybody to keep buying Brandon, that's really what we need. And then on page 6, Christina, the fund balance, would we like to keep that? It's a percentage of our revenue, right?
Yeah, it's about 50% of our expenditures is where we
So-
like to keep it.
So we're a little high
Between
then.
that 40 and 50. We're still a little high. We still have a couple projects that we've slated that towards to buy that down that we haven't done yet. One of them is,
Golf course.
2 of them need to be well, yeah, the golf course needs to be finished this year, and then one of them's supposed to be started this year, so. And we'll look at that again at, CIP time.
What's the second project that still needs to come?
The Big Sioux drainage,
What was that ballpark wise?
1.5.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot.
1.5?
and it could go up a little bit because we have a whole bunch of environmental studies to get through yet.
Yeah,
The retaining wall's almost paid, isn't it?
it still has curb gutter asphalt, I don't know how much left was that.
So we'd really want to keep it at around 5 million, and we're at 8.7, so we could,
Right.
and if we have a project, that pulls it to 7, so we have a little wiggle room in there.
A little bit.
Okay, all right. Thanks for doing this, thank you very much.
Yep.
Second. Motion and a second to approve the annual report. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have an opioid agreement, page 92 to 109. We discussed this last week. Any discussion? I'll look for a motion. Move to approve. Motion and second to approve the opioid agreement. Any further discussion?
What does that really do for us?
Yeah, I mean, we're just really collecting the money that they're allotting to us, and, we need to have conversations with either City of Sioux Falls and the county just to kind of,
We discussed that on Friday, or Thursday. We'll
yeah,
probably-
see if we
generally
can just
send the money to
join their
put it with Sioux
program,
Falls
really.
Funds.
Not very much, is
Right.
it?
And the
No.
funds are earmarked where they go.
yeah, and they're earmarked.
We don't necessarily want to create our own program.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have Resolution 10-23, annexing Track 3 of Lee's Addition. I'll look for a motion or discussion.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Resolution 10-23.
So-
Any further discussion?
Well, I guess, do we typically have a concept plan before the annexation, or the annexation is first?
No, they don't have to, it's just annexation is first, and then this annexation is contingent upon the sale. So we haven't had that before that I'm aware of, so it is a little bit different, but it is written in the resolution that way. So we will not file it until it's sold and changed over hands.
Okay, so let's say the sale goes through and it is annexed, so that's property to the south of the golf course,
Right there.
correct? I can't read a map. You know how we used to have basic skills, Iowa basic skill tests? I always failed those on map reading. So it's south of the golf course, so then we would have to sit down and figure out, you know, the whole water, sewer, and that all comes in after the annexation.
Yeah, we're already working on the southeast sanitary collection system, or whatever we're calling that, analyst right now, so we're working on that.
So Tammy, where would that dump into?
I have not had conversations with the developer, but from what I understand is that they want to put in their own private temporary lift station. And that would dump into one of our existing lift stations, either the golf course lift station and Bethany lift station. They're both kind of connected. I will say Bethany lift station is going to be kind of maxed out here pretty soon. We are putting in that line that runs all the way to Redwood for that new development and the new school on the east side there. We also have some restrictions with some of the existing pipe size out there. And then to put in this area for sewer, it's going to require another really large lift station like what we have kind of at our pond site that ships everything to Sioux Falls. And so it's not a cheap investment.
And again, so as long as this sells to Aspen Ridge LLC, if somebody else comes in, a different buyer would come in, then it would not be annexed. Is that my understanding? It's only to Aspen Ridge LLC?
It could be resold afterwards.
Sure.
Once it's
Gotcha, okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We got the City Hall, our RFQ Review Committee. Did we ever decide on exactly who was going to be on that committee?
I'm getting the instructions of Barb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Barb and I talked, yeah, Barbara's gonna
Okay.
serve on that.
So it'd
Okay.
be, what's listed in the packet, it'd be Mayor Buck, Councilmember Cole, and then Brian, myself, Patrick Andrews, and then Chief Stuffle, and then Barb, if I didn't say Barb.
Do we need a motion on this to approve the committee?
Just a quick mention, Dave, is this something that you want to be on? Because you were just kind of volunteered and you're gone. Okay.
Okay, I'll look for a motion to approve the committee.
Motion approved.
Motion second to approve the RFQ Review Committee. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 50th anniversary update.
So I passed out, and there's copies in the back as well, in the packet of just potential activities that the 50th Anniversary Volunteer Committee has been discussing. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, nothing is completely set. We're at the point right now where by the next meeting, we've asked everybody to get a group to partner on certain things to help set these ideas up. We had the journal set out there. Anybody have any other ideas that they wanted to bring? We didn't really hear any other ideas. So these are the ideas and the days and the locations that we're potentially looking at it. The city has some funds allocated that we're looking at how to spend those on, whether it be for the city picnic, the balloon tethered up and down. We'll have some expenses that we'll have for PA systems and things like that. So those are just the various activities we're looking at. We're also, out of those funds that the council previously allocated, looking at getting some banners up on our street lights, kind of like where we have the baskets of flowers, just letting everybody know that this is the year that we're 50. And I think there's a sideways banner right there shown potentially of what we would do on the streetlights. So last thing we're kind of looking at is fundraising in terms of what the city wants to allow, or the committee wants to allow in terms of various organizations coming alongside and doing fundraising. Like the Brandon Community Foundation is looking at doing a fundraising, $50 for 50 years. Sorry for my typo there, I say 40 years. That's what happened when I did this last minute. Jill from the Journal brought a really cool mosaic that was a letter B, that maybe would do something with that to fundraise and have this really great big letter B someplace. Or some of the activities, most are going to be free, so just suggested that people might bring some food pantry items to do the walk, run, or the yoga, or whatever the case may be. So trying to make it a really fun weekend that will have stuff for a lot of different interests. And all the parks have been reserved for this, so there should not be any soccer, baseball, softball.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate your volunteering to do this. Streets, work reports on page 118. We have the Brandon Transit Section 5310 grant application, or grant agreement with the South Dakota DOT. Look for a motion on that.
A second.
Motion and a second for the grant application, or grant agreement. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have termination of the TAP agreement with the Highway Department. Do we need a motion on this? I think we do.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to, on the termination of the TAP agreement.
Can you tell us about that, Tammy?
Yep, just a little bit of background on it. This is for that Redwood and Chestnut gravel section that is currently a township road. Back when we did that annexation study with CCOG and the preliminary engineering, that's when we applied for this TAP fund, because we really don't qualify for any other kind of state funding. They did award us this 400,000. There is a match with that, so it's not just a free 400,000 to go out there and do the work. We went through the CIP process and the council decided not to move forward with Redwood and Chestnut. We have talked to DOT multiple times about this because there was always plans to go kind of back by that Bethany drainage area and go behind those cul-de-sacs to put in a shared use path, and we have the easements and everything for that. DOT seems really open to that idea, but they want us to go through the whole process and reapply for the grant. So we'll turn this back in. They kind of know and understand our situation. They've been heavily involved in our master transportation plan and our bike and pedestrian plan. They seem very supportive yet. So I think if we move forward with that other trail system, then they would be willing to at least look at our grant application.
And the reason that we chose not to move ahead with that road reconstruction is because that's a township road. That's not our road.
Right.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We've got the 2023 slurry seal project bids, page 148 to 152.
We do this project almost every year with the City of Sioux Falls. City of Sioux Falls bids it out and then invites the neighboring communities to be part of that bid. Our portion of that is $290,000 this year. We opted out of it last year, and so we kind of have a pretty big area. It would be the Bluffs Edition, Eagle Creek Edition, Sioux Heights Edition, which is behind Casey's there by Sioux Boulevard, the Sylvan Circle area, and we will most likely do Heartland Business Park, which is over on the west side of town, kind of by the funeral home and Sioux Valley Energy. We'll see how much construction is going on there first, but hope to get started and doing it this summer. End date is August 1st.
Okay, we'll look for a motion. Second. Motion and a second to accept the slurry seal project bids. Any further discussion?
Tammy, is your crew large enough to hit several of these at one time, or is it more of a knock them down consecutively?
So that question has been asked, and they have to submit a schedule to us. They do have the equipment to have 2 different crews going on. I recommended that they didn't do 2 because we really only have 1 person that can be out there to watch them and try to organize it, because they're a fast-moving crew, and so we close the street typically down for about half a day, but sometimes that half a day is at 9 and then opens up in the afternoon, and sometimes it's in the afternoon and doesn't open up until people get home. And we have bus routes and transit and that sort of thing to work around. So hopefully they only have 1 crew and we do it in 1 neighborhood at a time.
Did we vote on this?
I don't think so.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Water and sewer. You're up.
Good evening, Kevin Smith, representing the Water Conservation Committee, and maybe for those of you that are newer to the council, I'll give you a kind of a thumbnail description of what our committee does, how long we've been around, and some of our responsibilities. So the Water Conservation Committee was formed in 2018, and we're really an outgrowth of the Water Development Committee that was created in 2017, and that was as a result of some ongoing water challenges that the city was experiencing at the time. And it was determined by the Water Development Committee that water conservation was an important issue for our community, and carved out the Water Conservation Committee. So a number of us have been on the committee since then, and I think I can summarize our initiatives under 3 words: to incentivize, to educate, and to enforce. to incentivize. That's the outgrowth of that is the ongoing financial commitment that city has made in the Water Smarter program, where we rebate back to utility customers savings to help them save water and save money at the same time. And that, I think, has been a very it's been a very effective program. Last year, I think we maxed out the amount of money that we had set aside for rebates, so that's very good. The second item, to educate, it's been an ongoing journey. It's a journey, not a destination, with lawn watering restrictions, which we'll talk about in a minute, but just general water conservation, both indoors and outdoors. We recognize how important that is for our community, and we take a lot of opportunities, whether it's the Loyalty Day Parade or the Biz Bash, or when some of us are forced into social media videos to promote water conservation in the summer. But just to keep that word out in front of our residents of the importance of water conservation. The third item that I think we're all here to talk about tonight or discuss, enforcement, the lawn watering restrictions, and post 2017 into 2018 and beyond, when the city mandated the odd even restrictions year-round, great at shaving the peak, also included certain triggers. Water usage reaches a certain level, this is what happens, then this, then this. Most recently, the Water Conservation Committee has been discussing, the trigger point of going from green level, which is just the odd even 10 to 6 lawn watering restrictions that we have, and what takes us to the next level, acknowledging that the city has grown, and knowing that we were most interested in at least discussing a methodology for the future. And Ben will be here in a few minutes to talk about the water treatment plant, and we used some of the information based on the 2070 capacity of the water treatment plant and how much water are we going to need in 2070, what is the capacity of the treatment plant, and not to come up with individual numbers. It was really about discussing a methodology so that we can maximize the capacity of the treatment plant, not just tomorrow, but for its lifetime. Like anything else, if you make an investment in a house, you expect it to last a number of years. You don't want to wear it out. You need to manage everything from maintenance and repair to how you reinvest in it. You don't want to wear things out before the value is gone. That was our approach. If this is a 50-year investment in infrastructure, then it should last that long, recognizing that our community hopefully continues to grow, and to make some accommodations for the essential uses of water first. Absolutely. We have to have water to meet our daily needs, washing, cooking, cleaning, things like that. In the summertime, acknowledge that there does need to be some level accommodating lawn watering. Not out of control, no restrictions lawn watering, but again, a methodology that annually the city can look at and determine, is this level appropriate or not? So the numbers I should say the methodology that we discussed at our most recent Water Conservation Committee at great length is something that we're proposing to you or presenting to you tonight. And I recognize you got other information, and Raleigh's got some things to share with you as well. And first, I want to thank you for the opportunity to even be having the conversation about water conservation, because a lot of communities don't. And they wait until they're out of water and then decide, gosh, we should do something about water conservation. You can look at, I don't want to point out the West Coast, but there are places that are really struggling because they didn't plan well enough ahead. They reach a point of criticality and then they're out of options. What we're talking about tonight, and again, is we understand we're here just to discuss this, is we appreciate the opportunity just to be having the conversation about the future of the city of Brandon, not just, hey, we're going to have an increased capacity in our treatment plant, and we got increased storage, but also the responsible management. And there's a lot of ways you can define responsible management, and there's many different ways of considering lawn watering restrictions, let alone trigger points. Some communities, they do it a different way. So there's not a American Water Works Association standard for everyone needs to do it this way. It's very much specific to your community and what fits. So our recommendation of, without walking through the math too far, but using our winter averages, indoor water use in November and December, using a factor of 2.5, a peaking factor, to calculate, well then, let's take that indoor water use, let's apply a 2.5 factor for peaking, and that would be our summer trigger. That number, roughly calculated, would be about 1.8 million gallons a day. That is 200,000 gallons a day above what the current trigger is. We also calculated an additional 100,000 gallons per day to go from the yellow stage to the red stage, and that's when everybody stops. And we did that in 2017. We went from 0 to complete ban, and there was a dramatic drop in water usage. And one of the things we take into consideration, especially I'd say with the Water Conservation Committee, is don't wait until that day before you warn residents that we're getting close. So we know that the trigger has gone over the yellow line a few times in the past. We don't want to send the wrong message to the community either, that once the water treatment plant capacity is doubled essentially, then use twice as much water, because that goes back to the whole point of planning out. So you're using the capacity annually that you can essentially afford to, and saving capacity for the future, because we know what the cost of the water treatment plant is, and we've all heard from other utility ratepayers who are concerned about water costs. Well, our duty is to make sure that we extend those resources as long as we can in the most cost-effective way possible, with also allowing some use of outdoor water. So again, however this council determines is the next path forward, whether you change it all, leave it the way it is, whether you modify it with a recommendation like the Water Conservation Committee has come up with, of the methodology to us is more important, I would say, than the number, because one of the things we have challenged each other with on the committee side is, well, how can we present something, or what can we present to the council and to the community that's understandable and somewhat predictable? So we don't want to be unreasonable or arbitrary in making a recommendation. So again, the methodology we presented was one of what could be many. And hopefully there is more discussion about this. And again, just to close, thank you just for supporting water conservation as a concept. It is important, and certainly in the summer when we reach peak lawn watering season, if it's a summer like 2022, yeah, we'll go over a trigger point at, if it's left at 1.6, who knows? But I also, if you look back at years like 2019, which were cooler and wetter, I think the max day was 1.2 million gallons in the summer. So sometimes, this goes back maybe to the education perspective, people tend to do what they think is good for them. And if they feel like their lawn is suffering, they're going to put more water on it. We'll do what we can, but there does need to be active enforcement for whatever those restrictions are, so that message, along with incentives and education, gets out there as well. And I'm just going to leave you with again a word of thanks from the committee's perspective. We spent an awful lot of time talking about an awful lot of subjects, and I know it isn't high on anybody's radar right now, because hopefully no one's out watering their lawn yet, but when that time comes, we'll be supportive of the council's decision. So with that, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the effort of you and your committee for volunteering to do this work, and it's important, so thank you.
Thank you.
Raleigh?
So I gave everybody a memo on my thoughts on the water treatment trigger numbers going up. I'm just gonna hit some highlights. The basic thing I got for it is I'm trying to be a good steward for the city. I'm trying to look out for everybody, and everybody in town knows that there's certain people that have greener yards than everybody else. And it's the few that use a lot more than the people that don't. So just basing it on the 11,000 people plus in town here, if you use 60 gallons a day per person per day, that comes out to about 662,000 gallons a day. In November of 2022, we used 710,000, slightly over. December, we used 694,000, slightly over. January 23 was 681,000, and February 23 was 709,000. So those numbers, if you divide that down out by the 11,000 people, that's coming out to anywhere between 61 to 65 gallons per person per day. So the biggest issue I got is raising this number. The water treatment plant was built in 1998, so it's getting older. There's some stuff that's going on with it, you know, issues with like equipment failures, stuff like that. So we're trying to stay ahead of that. And another note I would like to make is that just because we can double our water capacity, where's that water coming from? You're taxing that well as hard as we can right now. When you run it 24 hours a day, you're drawing the aquifer down. And we've had the issues before come up, well, how much are we replenishing that aquifer? I don't want to say that it wouldn't replenish, but at 1 million gallons a day or 2 million gallons a day, that just gets to be too much. Speaking to what Kevin had said, yeah, the watering regulations went into effect 2017, which they were changed again in 2018. They were changed once again in 2021. And now in 2023, we're looking to change them again. So we've been changing them about every 2 years, roughly. In 2018, there were 61 violations given. 2019, the exceptionally wet year, we still had 25 violations. 2020, we had 58 violations in 2021, and 42 in 2022. I just don't think that's being responsible with our water supply, whether you're maintaining those numbers, and I just don't think we're being responsible with our water. And as for the enforcement, I am the enforcement. I'm the guy that has to go to every house and write a ticket for every one of those. So, and if I see somebody or somebody reports it, then I still got to go out and I got to check it. So, I mean, if we want to raise them, I guess that's up to you guys. I just don't feel that I'd be a very good steward if I raise the triggers. We got a water treatment plant that's in the process of being finished in 2024, I believe. Water tower will be online 2023. So we may gain some capacity there, but it was also going to tax our system to have to fill that 1.5 million gallons a day. So.
Okay, thanks. We don't need a motion on this yet.
No, a resolution needs to be drawn up for it,
Okay.
so that would go in the next meeting.
Right.
So I want to make a comment on the recommendation. It's actually the most conservative one that the committee had looked at with the data, because we had also looked at methodology that dealt with population or like worst case scenario for the plant, and this was actually the lowest, the most conservative. The other ones would have been like 1.9 or 2. I guess I do want to address the aquifer recharging thing, because I don't want there to be panic again on the water, and we had this studied. Tammy, can you help me? I don't remember the name that did that, but I know they looked out like 50 or 70 years, and we were reassured adamantly that supply was not an issue. So can we put that on record?
Correct. We had WSP do an aquifer model. They looked at monitoring wells throughout the aquifer. It is recharging. They did not see a long-term drawdown. We do own more water rights. We have future water rights. The study actually pointed out a few other wells that could be developed as well in that aquifer. What Raleigh was talking about is just that initial impact of drawing down around that well. So our aquifer is recharging.
And a refresher on the tower, we're anticipating that will be operational July-ish,
Yep, hopefully mid-July.
and that will have how much capacity?
1.25 million gallons.
And just for the council's knowledge on population change, it has been a little more than a smidge, depending on what information you look at. It's 17 or 19% from the time that this was started. Brian had some population data in like 4 meetings ago in our packet, and if you look at that, it's 17%. If you Google what our current population is, then it's more like 19%. But I personally feel that if the experts are telling us our plant can handle it, we need to change the amount that we are allotting for our residents when the number of residents changes by 17 or 19%. I think that's only fair. Quality of life means different things to different people. I, for one, love to take care of my outdoor plants and garden, and I use water. That's something that is a quality of life factor for me. So it's a little bit personal for me to say our rations have to stay the same, even though we've added a whole bunch of people to the mix. So I would be very much in favor of asking the staff to bring forward a resolution, but we didn't ask for that proactively until we could have conversation.
So Dan and I have served on the Water Development and Water Conservation Committee since the beginning. And so, Raleigh, I appreciate what you've done for Brandon and everything, your comments, and I've supported you every year keeping that level the same. But I really feel that we need to bump it up a little bit, and I don't think 1.8 is too much, and here's my reasoning. I think the Water Conservation Committee has done a really good job in keeping our residents conserving water, because as Kevin said, not every town has a Water Conservation Committee, and they're all volunteers. Trudy's here tonight. I mean, these are volunteers that have been sitting on this committee for years, and I really appreciate that. But like a rebellious teenager, if we don't give a little bit to our citizens and say, hey, our population has grown, we've got to give them a little bit of, just a smidge of more watering, I think they're just going to dig in their heels and they're going to say, the city doesn't care what we're doing, we're just going to go crazy with this. And we've seen it, and we know who's got the green grass, right? And they'll probably still be crazy. But I think people like myself, I haven't turned on my sprinkler for 4 years. It's made an impact on our watering, and hopefully it's made an impact on other people's. But if we just ignore what our residents say and don't make any changes, I think we're going to go backwards. And it's more of a public perspective than anything, and I think we can absorb it. So.
Any other discussion?
Real quick, so this 1.6 has been in effect for how long? Is it actually 2017, or is it? Since 2018, this 1.6 trigger has been in effect. Okay.
17?
There was a resolution in 17, actually, that was.
2021, you changed the number of days.
But not the trigger.
1 and 24 is the new plant supposed to be online.
The original contract says November of '24, but change order that is down on the agenda adds about 60 days to that. So we'll just say early 2025.
We've got 2 summers to run with this plant then. I would make a motion, well, I don't know if we need a motion.
No, we don't need a
need a
motion at this
motion? Okay, all right.
No,
Well,
I think
I
it's
don't
just
know how the rest,
direction, and we can take your comments, and staff
Well,
can meet
we'll get a
within the next
resolution at the
couple
next
weeks
meeting.
and discuss.
Yeah.
and then vote on it.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2, Resolution 0923, authorizing application for financial assistance for the East Side sanitary sewer main.
So this is, kind of comes out of the legislation with Senate Bill 20 was introduced to allow de-obligated funds to be awarded to other systems. It goes back to the American Rescue Plan Act where $600 million was given to infrastructure projects. If somebody doesn't use all of their application that was allotted to them, then now there's a bill out there that it can go back into the kitty and it can be awarded to another system. We have been awarded for this project $478,000, a little over that. That is all they could allow or allowed us or approve at our last application. So what I'm doing is submitting another application to see if they'll do the 30%, because they'll do up to 30% of a project. So it's certainly not guaranteed. It's just something I want to submit again and see if we qualify and if they'll approve it. So potentially up to $900,000 in grants, and it would reduce the cost of the bond if we were awarded.
Sounds like a no-brainer. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Motion and second to approve. Any further discussion?
Thanks for doing that, Christine.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good job. Water tower project pay application. We'll look for a motion on that.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Water treatment plant change order number 1. We'll look for a motion on that.
Can you explain what this one is?
Yeah, Ben's here from A2S. Ben, do you want to just kind of give an overview?
Sure can. Ben Jolson with A2S. This change order is largely geared or wholly geared around a property line discrepancy that was found. Originally, the city and county GIS data was used. They were matching, showed the exact same stuff. They were found during bidding to be incorrect. That spurred around conversations with the railroad company when it came to discussions with contractors during bidding on what they could do in proximity to the railroad. Because that was found while the project was in the bidding phase, it was discussed with the city on if we wanted to delay bidding and make corrections or adjustments, or bid the project as is and then make adjustments after when we're dealing with just one contractor. Just decided to let the project bid as is and immediately move into making the necessary changes right away with the contractor that we had on board at that time. So we notified the contractor once we had them under contract, adjusted the building. Really what it encompasses is shifting the RO portion of the building south. That included in turn rearranging the whole lower level of the building because we can no longer access it from the east side of the building without being able to put a driveway over there. Got to access it from the southwest corner. Some additional piping had to be moved on the south side of the building. Gets into some additional concrete, some additional precast. Initially, this change order started out as almost a $900,000 change order. And working through with the contractor about options and what we could do with the building and constructability-wise and access, we were able to get it down to what the current cost is, just under $300,000.
So Ben, if this had been dealt with right away, how much of that cost would we have incurred anyway?
A majority of it would have been in there. I meant to look at the numbers. I think it was 90%, 85 or 90% would have been in the original bid anyway.
Okay, so since there is a 10 to 15% difference, is that something that can be negotiated with your firm to help cover that cost?
We typically don't assist in paying with change orders. The city's the one benefiting with that we've put in the work to get it down to the cost that it was. I understand it was a mistake in the property line. We used the GIS data, we intend to use the GIS data because of matching with the city and the county data. We didn't have it in our scope to do a property line bid for the project. Once the discrepancy was found, we did hire a local consultant that had a property survey completed so we could map it out and work with the contractor at that point.
So Ben, how much, what is your admin cost on this project?
What do you mean by admin costs?
Well, I mean, do you have an administrative cost on this contract, right, to administer it?
Are you talking the construction admin
Yeah.
budget as a whole?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
But it's substantial, right?
600,000 or so, yep.
Actually saying work with us here.
Well, I would love to, but I can't say it was, our fault as engineers causing the discrepancy in the property line. If we had known that the data that was being used was incorrect, by all means, we would have done something different and used different data or completed a survey.
You
But
don't double check that? I don't know anything about engineering.
At the time,
But from
we
a
didn't.
business standpoint, usually when these things happen, there's a little give and take on both sides, and that's what I'm asking for. And I don't even know if that's reasonable, but in my world it is.
at the time, we had no reason to doubt it. We went to two sources, everything matched. There's nothing in our mind saying that something would be wrong here.
Tammy, do you have any thoughts or an opinion?
Yeah, every project has its little mishaps. When we bid out a project, they're never 100% perfect, right? A lot of it is stuff that we can usually fix in the field, or, a contractor might have a different opinion or an idea, and then we kind of change it. Change orders, everybody thinks they're bad, but they're really not bad. Change orders just kind of help keep the paperwork in line. Most of the time on our projects, we've been pretty lucky on where our change orders actually deduct the actual cost. AE2S has been really good about redesigning this and working with the contractor. The original submittal, when it was almost 900,000, was a really big shock. And they worked back and forth to go over every little detail, down to seeding and excavation and working with the railroad. The railroad's been really good to work with. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but they're allowing us to use some of their right-of-way for construction purposes so that we don't have to use a whole bunch of sheeting.
Yep, that's correct. Up into their property line, as long as we don't touch the slope of the railroad base
And
during the construction of the project.
And so some of those conversations probably wouldn't have been had before. If we would have rejected the bid, because we found out or realized it like a day or two before it actually bid, it probably would have pushed the project 6 to 8 months, because they'd have to go back, redesign, update all the plans. We'd have to re-advertise. The contractors would have to go through their whole process again. We already had mandatory meetings during the bid. We didn't just let any contractor bid on it. They had to come to a meeting. They had to look at the site. They had to ask their questions. So it was a long ordeal. When he says that 15% of the project cost is something that the city wouldn't have to pay for, that's about $45,000. And if you look at the total cost of the whole project, which is over $25 million, that $45,000 is about 0.2% of the total project, of just the construction costs. So I know $45,000 is a lot, and I bet that we can make it up later in the project. We're still really early in the project. But I think it's a reasonable request from AE2S to say, hey, we messed up. They did their best to fix it and to move forward with the project.
I think you can also approve the change order and have discussions with AE2S later about whether they're going to take the administration fee on the added $300,000, whether, I don't know if Ben's the one you want to have those conversations with, but I think if you approve the change order You can have those conversations with A2S later to see if there is some possible discount. I don't think approving today is going to cause you to not be able to visit with them.
One question I have is, this is not going to affect the water bills itself as far as the surcharge fees?
No, it will not. The bond has already been, we already have the bond, so those costs have already been implemented, so no.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries. Pay application number 4.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve pay application number 4. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The Sioux Falls Force Main letter. Tammy?
Yep, so we have been working on getting that redundant line to Sioux Falls from our big lift station. Right now, we only have one, and it's nearing capacity. So the second one, we have been working with the city of Sioux Falls, which is actually really good timing because they're doing some upgrades to their facility. We're still kind of working through that alignment on where that goes because it's not going to follow the existing pipe, mostly because Rice Holly is right there and part of it's paved over. So we're changing that alignment a little bit, working with Excel and working with the county and working with the city of Sioux Falls. But the city of Sioux Falls is requesting that we do a formal letter to them requesting this so that we can start working on some of those contracts and agreements that will be required for it.
Okay. Do you want to, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'd move to approve this letter.
I don't think we need a motion, do we? Christina?
Yeah, we do need a motion.
Okay. Okay, all right. We have a motion then. Do we need a second?
Got a second.
Got a motion and a second?
Any chance they would say no?
No, they've been involved in the whole process, so.
Any further discussion?
I just have one question. There was a pipe that was put up underneath Veterans Parkway when they were building that. Is that still?
Yes. Yep.
That'll still
And
be
we're
there?
still going to use it. Yep.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Notice of failure to monitor.
I received a letter from the DANR on March 10th stating that we had missed our number of samples. We had 7, but we missed 3. So we have to put out a notification, which I believe is going out in the next water billing, to all the citizens. I think you guys all have a copy of it, stating that the chlorine samples were safe. We just missed taking the 3 microbiological samples. In my profession, if it's got chlorine in it, it should be safe, but according to the state, you're supposed to take 10 samples. We didn't, operator oversight, so we got 7 out of the 10, but we'll get a ding on that, so. Water's still safe. We have taken samples since, I guess I should mention that too. First week of March, we just got them back and everything was good, so.
I have,
Track record was good for how many years?
20 plus.
I have no doubt that the water's safe. I mean, we haven't changed the source, we haven't changed the treatment. But I do think our communication with the public is important. And like I mentioned Thursday, I would really like to see us do a press release and be proactive rather than reactive. When a business owner fails a compliance check on a liquor sting, we have them come in here and tell us what happened and specifically what they're going to do to remedy it to make sure it doesn't happen again. And then we find some comfort with that. I mean, just to have this information show up in people's water bills, I think is a very wrong approach, because we have a very sensitive topic already around water, so I would like us to provide some education and reassurance. I don't know how everybody else feels, but.
I think it's fair, and just going through like Raleigh, just maybe even in this press release, having information, hey, here's what we're doing going forward to remedy this. I know you've got 20 plus years of amazing, but also at the same time, because we had this one hiccup, at least the residents and city will know that, hey, here's what we're doing going forward so this doesn't happen again.
That is kind of listed in the letter, yeah.
What are we doing?
I am personally checking to make sure that the samples are all taken before the end of the month. We are told by the DANR that we're supposed to try and take our samples, 3 samples, and 4 samples. They don't want them all 10 at the same time. So we're trying to accommodate that. Well, with 9.5 hours days plowing snow, it got overlooked. So, and he thought he had taken all 10 at that time, but it didn't happen. So I am personally monitoring it. So I guess, I don't know, like I say, I guess the other thing is too, it's the same guy that takes the samples. So usually there's a couple that take them when the other guy's gone, but I've talked to both of them too and make sure that we're getting the number of samples taken every month, so.
So how can we do some sort of a press release? We need to do something. Yeah.
I can work with Christina and write something in Raleigh.
Okay, I think that'd be good.
And these are due to hit the water bills when? A week or?
Water bills will most likely go about by the end of the week, so the ones that get them by email, they'll have a link that they can click on and see the bill insert.
The end of this
Otherwise, they
week?
would probably be in their mailbox Saturday or Monday.
Okay, and I would request that we do it right away.
Yeah.
Thursday or Friday, it'll be done Thursday or Friday.
Tomorrow, make it tomorrow.
If I get everything else, it'll be tomorrow.
Okay. We'll move on. Any new business? No new business. We don't need an executive session that I know of. Then I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.